Would you say one of your goals as a player is to be consistent? You want to go out there and put together consistent performances for yourself, your coach, and your team. But now, how do you actually be consistent? Well, one of the first places we need to look are the routines that you have throughout the week and the routine you have going into the game, and even routines that you have during games. So what I'm going to do is explain the importance of having routines within your game, how routines can increase this ability to be consistent, and the specific routines that you need as an athlete. Now, when it comes to being consistent, a challenge that we can often run into is focusing too much on the outcome in terms of consistency. What this means is that you are thinking, I need to get 3 hits a game in order to be consistent. I need to score at least 5 points a game. I need to get at least 2 to 3 catches a game. So we start to measure consistency based on the outcome. Now, the tricky thing here is that is what it technically means to be consistent, and that is what coaches, fans, stat keepers, everybody else will be looking to those specific metrics in order to judge whether or not you are consistent. But as the person actually putting a performance together that leads to those outcomes, you can't allow yourself to get too caught up in those metrics, in the statistics, and in outcomes in terms of consistency. Because one of the things that we can see happen is that this leads to a lot of fear, anxiety, and perfectionism, to where instead of focusing on the process of your game that will lead to the consistent performances, you find yourself caught up in this desire to get a consistent performance, which may lead to some stress, some tension, and overall just trying to force a good performance. So the way that we counteract this, the way that we make sure that you don't focus too much on the outcome of your performance, is by focusing on what it means to be consistent in terms of actions. And this is where routines come into play. The reason that routines lead to consistency is because as an athlete, you need to focus on what you can control if you want to be a consistent player. Now, we know that you cannot 100% control the outcome of your performance, otherwise you would be having perfect performances all the time. What you can control, however, are all the different actions that you take leading up to a game, and also different actions that you take during the game that are 100% within your control, and those are where we want to put our attention. And that's where routines come into play, because when you set routines for yourself, you trust that throughout the week, I have all these routines that I'm using that lead to me being ready to perform, right? Whether it's a mental preparation routine, whether it's training routines, whether it's a nutrition routine, you have all these routines in place that lead to you being at your peak levels when it comes to the performance. And then also during the performance, we have different routines, such as a pregame routine, pre-at-bat, pre-shot, pre-swing, whatever it might be routine. And then we also have some post routines that we'll talk about here in a second. But we have all these different routines to where if you focus on each individual action within these routines, they become habits. And then what that leads to is that when these habits get put together and you do them over an extended period of time, that's where consistent outcomes actually come from without you having to stress about consistent outcomes. So what kinds of routines do you need as an athlete? Well, the ones that I want to pinpoint are the ones that I use specifically within one-on-one coaching that I've seen the most success with. And one that we want to start with is a training routine. This training routine will actually be a physical training routine. Now, when I'm working with an athlete, I work with all different sports, so I never focus on specific training drills or anything like that, but it's the structure of the routine that we want to focus on. For example, I just began working with a football player, and he's a linebacker. And right now he's in the off season because it's the summer, and so he's working on getting himself ready for this fall season. And so one of the things that he and I were talking about during our last session was piecing together a really good routine for himself throughout the week in terms of training so that he can be focusing on improving some of the weaknesses that he has within his game while also working on strengthening his areas of his game that he does well, or I guess his strengths, right? Strengthening his strengths. And so what we've done is that we've pieced together a routine for him to follow throughout the week so he stays consistent with actions that will lead to progress within his game physically. So that's one routine you want to focus on. You want to focus on a physical training routine that you're using throughout the week. Now, I know that you probably have practice, especially if you're in season. However, I would really encourage you to put together a training routine outside of practice, because during practice, unless you play an individual sport, but even with individual sports, coach will work on what coach wants to work on, but that's not necessarily what you specifically need to be focused on in order to enhance your performance in the quickest way possible. So while you do want to focus, you obviously want to work hard and work your hardest every single practice, you also want to make sure that you are putting in time outside of practice to improve some areas of your game that maybe are weaknesses right now. So first things first, make sure you have a training routine in place for yourself throughout the week. Now, another routine that you want to have is a daily mental training routine. Whenever I'm working with an athlete, I see mental training in a very similar way to physical training. So just like that football player example I just gave, he's working on improving his physical skills through the use of a routine over an extended period of time. We want to apply the same principle for mental training. If you want to improve your confidence, you need to make sure that you are talking to yourself in a confident way, which means you need to train your ability to control your thinking, which means you need to have exercises that you do every single day. Now, you could also say that you want to improve the ability to calm your nerves. Well, that takes calming your mind, and it takes being able to control your focus so you aren't too focused on the future and the outcome. Once again, that takes improving that skill of being able to control your focus and calm your mind, which means you need to be doing that on a daily basis. So you also need to have a daily mental training routine in place. Now, another routine that you need to have is likely a nutrition routine. Now, this isn't one that I speak with athletes specifically about because I'm not an expert in nutrition. However, I do guide them in ways of putting together a routine for them that helps when it comes to the nutritional side of things, because that's very important so that you increase your focus with the way that you eat, and also so you have enough energy and you're increasing the strength that you need to have to be able to perform at your peak levels. So if we look at kind of a weekly plan for you, you need to make sure you have a training routine in place, a daily mental training routine in place, and then you should also have a nutrition plan in place for yourself, or a nutrition routine in place as well. Now we can transition more into games or competitions. So for games and competition, you need to make sure you have a pre-game or pre-competition routine. This will involve the night before and the day of, to where you are going through different routines, or different exercises, I should say, that help you increase focus, increase confidence, and calm your nerves as you lead into the competition. Some other routines that you want to have throughout the game are different routines before plays, or different routines before at-bats. The best example of this is a baseball or softball player who has a pre-at-bat routine, something that they go through before they go up to the plate every time. And they may also have a pre-pitch routine they use in the field that's very quick, that they use before every single pitch to make sure that they're locked in and ready to make the play if the ball is hit to them. I work with a lot of golfers, and we make sure that they have pre-swing routines. We make sure that they have pre-putting routines. All these different pre-routines that you can use within games to make sure that you are as focused, confident, and calm as possible going into whatever the next play looks like for you. And then another routine that you want to have actually during games are post routines. So going back to the example of baseball and softball players, we also talk a lot about putting in place post at-bat routines to make sure that they are learning from the at-bat, adjusting as quickly as possible, and then moving on to the next pitch. For golfers, it's a post-shot routine, a post-hole routine, whatever it might be. For football players, I've talked to them about post-drive routines, where when they get to the sideline, they go through a post-drive routine to process through the previous drive and get them moving on and ready for the next one. But these post routines are very important because they help you move on from mistakes quickly, refocus quickly, but also learn and make adjustments if you need to. And then the last routine that I want to mention is a post-game or a post-competition routine. This is something you go through after every single competition, and you can also apply this to practices, where you go through and you use an evaluation system to make sure that you are building your confidence by focusing on some positives while also taking some things that you want to learn from the competition. So in summary, routines are a way for you to create consistency within your game, not because you're worried about the outcome, but because you are focusing on taking consistent action. And there are many different routines you need, including a daily physical training routine, a daily mental training routine, a daily nutritional routine, and then also a pre-game or pre-competition routine, some pre-routines within competition, such as a pre-shot or a pre-swing routine, and then also post-shot, post-swing routines, or any kind of post-drive routine that you might need, and then also a post-game or post-competition routine. Use those routines, and they will lead you to become more of a consistent player because you are focusing on taking consistent action that leads to peak performance. Now, if you are interested in learning more about a pregame routine, I've linked another video right here that walks you through how to create your own pregame routine as an athlete. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.